This video is a GCF and box factor on day 9. So when we are squared by itself, but in number 1, x squared is not by itself. So we need to figure out how can I get from 7x squared to x squared? Well, I can take out a GCF of 7. So everything would divide by 7. So we put 7 out front as our GCF. We'd be left with x squared plus 4x plus 3. Now, once we get here, this is going to be our box factoring that we're used to. So we want to figure out what are two numbers that multiply to 3 and add to 4. Well, the only numbers that multiply to 3 are 1 and 3, and those luckily add to 4. So we would have 7, we bring our GCF down, times x plus 1 times x plus 3. In number 2, we have x cubed minus 5x squared minus 14. Again, that's not what we want because we want an x squared by itself. So notice that each term has an x, so we need to decrease it by 1 by taking out a GCF of x. So we'd be left with x squared minus 5x minus 14. So we want now two numbers that multiply to negative 14 and add to negative 5. Because we are multiplying to negative 14, we want one number of each sign, a positive and a negative. In this case, our bigger number is going to be negative because we're multiplying to negative 14. So we would have negative 7 and 2. So we have x times x minus 7 times x plus 2. So number 3, we have 2x cubed minus 18x squared plus 40x. So in this case, we have one too many x's because every term has an x and only the first two are supposed to. And there's this 2 here. So 2x is going to be our GCF. So we're going to decrease the x and divide everything by 2. So we get x squared minus 9x plus 20. So now we need to factor. So we need to figure out two numbers that multiply to 20 and add to negative 9. So they both need to be negative in this case. So it'd be negative 5 and negative 4. So we have 2x times x minus 5 times x minus 4. In the next 3 problems, we're going to factor completely and then solve using zero product property. So there's 2 steps here. Just like what we were doing first, we're going to factor. We need to make sure our equation is set equal to 0, which it is in the first one. So to get this to become an x squared, we would need to divide everything by 4. So we're going to put a 4 out front for our GCF. We're left with x squared plus 4x minus 12 is equal to 0. So now we need to factor. What are two numbers that multiply to negative 12 and add to 4? So we need one of each sign, so that would be 6 and negative 2. So we have 4 times x plus 6 times x minus 2 equals 0. Now, instead of stopping here like we did in the last problem, any term or parenthesis that has an x needs to get set equal to 0. So we have x plus 6 equals 0, x minus 2 equals 0, and we're going to solve for x. So subtract 6, x equals negative 6, add 2, so x equals 2. And we should have 2 solutions because we had an exponent of 2. In number 5, we have x cubed minus 6x squared plus 8x equals 0. So everything has one too many x's. So we're going to take a GCF of x out. And that leaves us with x squared minus 6x plus 8 equals 0. So we need two numbers that multiply to 8 and add to negative 6. So they're both going to be negative in this case, negative 4 and negative 2. So we have x times x minus 4 times x minus 2 equals 0. Each term has an x this time, so they all get set equals 0. X equals 0, that one's done. X minus 4 equals 0, and x minus 2 equals 0. So first we're going to add 4 to both sides. So x equals 4. We're going to add 2 to both sides, so x equals 2. Notice we had an exponent of 3, so we should have 3 solutions. Our last problem is not set equal to 0. So first thing we have to do is we have to move that 18x over. So we're going to subtract 18x from both sides. And we get 3x cubed plus 15x squared minus 18x is equal to 0. So in order to become an x squared, we need to divide everything by 3 and decrease our x's. So we have 3x times x squared plus 5x minus 6 equals 0. So we need to figure out what are two numbers that multiply to -6 and add to 5. So we need a positive and a negative. So we'd have 6 and -1. So we get 3x times x plus 6 times x minus 1 equals 0. Each term with an x needs to get set equal to 0. So 3x equals 0, x plus 6 equals 0, and x minus 1 equals 0. So first we're going to divide by 3, so x equals 0. We're going to subtract 6 from both sides, so x equals -6. And we're going to add 1 to both sides, so x equals +1. Again, we have the highest exponent of 3, so we should have 3 solutions.